This is Chuck Gedraitis, and you're listening to the Bladeology podcast.
Avoid legal snaps by telling people that you're being recorded. Hey, everybody, you're being recorded on the Bladeology podcast. What episode number is this? I don't remember. Anyway,
Six.
See,
this is episode 6.
Chuck should be a regular. He
Damn
knows
it.
more about our shit than we do.
All right, so 8 minutes. Just delete everything before this, just for myself later. All right, so welcome to Bladeology podcast. I think this is our 6th episode. It's been a little while since we've done a recording. There's been a lot going on. Shows have slowed down for a little bit. We've had a little time to catch up. Certainly not with content. And today we'll be interviewing Chuck Gedraitis, a knife maker and friend of the podcast. I'm Jeremiah Burbank from PBK Vegas.
Elijah Isham from Isham Blade Works.
Nick Schuprin from NCC Knives.
And I'm Chuck Gedraitis.
Awesome. So let's do a quick roundup. Chuck, what have you been up to lately in the shop? What are you doing over there?
I am currently finishing up a Loveless-inspired New York Special flipper folder. So it's got front bolster, piece of handle material, which is green linen micarta, and then a second bolster, almost like his sub-tilt styles. So that's all in pieces on my bench. I basically just need to put it together, and it's destined for Blade show, and I've already started building knives for Blade.
Oh wow. Okay. Start early, start fresh. That sounds like a cool build. So we're in March now, so we've got a few months, but there's never too early for Blade show builds, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I don't even know anything about that. I start 7 days before, and I just don't sleep.
Yeah, Nick thinks it's 6 months out. I don't think so.
Blade show, I identify it as 6 months away, so
No matter when it is.
no matter when it
It's
is,
always
I
6
months.
just acknowledge it when it's a week away, and I'm like, oh fuck me, I guess I ain't sleeping, and it works every time. It's been 5 years, 6 years, and it's worked every time.
I mean, if it's not a winning streak, don't mess with it. What about you, Elijah? What have you been up to?
All the usual. CAD work.
Working hard? Yeah?
Yeah, working harder than any of you.
Working hard, working hard, or barely working.
Oh man. Yeah, pretty much getting a lot of stuff ready for Blade show. Hopefully, you'll see some prototypes.
You have a lot of
Pretty
builds
much
on
just-
the bench, or?
Oh yeah, the shop is running. Pretty much just finalizing a lot of stuff to get everything ready for Blade show. A lot of new stuff on the Civivi horizon. That should be pretty interesting. Couple Wii stuff, but yeah, other than that, just finishing up some CAD work. Pretty much the usual.
Sounds good. Nick, have you started building for Blade show yet?
What is Blade show?
It's not important. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Okay, I'll figure it out eventually.
It's a little show held at KFC just outside Atlanta. It's like a new thing. It's just for the cool kids.
KFC. Okay.
It's
So
a startup
Kentucky's at
show.
a Mexican restaurant. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. I haven't really finished anything in like a month and a half because I've been prototyping. So my father is going to be a full-time employee of NCC Knives. Hopefully, what's next month? April. At the start of April. So I'm gonna have to prototype models so I could teach him the ways of the frame lock. Like right now, I'm working on a 2-inch frame lock, which is essentially my pod friction folder that I turned into a frame lock. Mostly prototyping my Bally. So yeah, February and March has just been the month of prototype. Oh, no, March has pretty much been the month of prototyping for me. I gotta prototype both of those, make sure they're right, because Balisong is easier for me to work with my father on. And the little frame lock is easier for me to teach him how to make frame locks since they don't cost as much. If he fucks them up, won't be as bad as a full-size. Full-size knife has a lot of work into it by the time block and detent is done, and a lot of cost prior to that.
Cool. Sounding good. That sounds pretty productive, actually.
It's productive. I just haven't finished anything for sale and made money in the month, but a lot of like new shit's going on in the shop. Unfortunately, it's what I have to do since he's waiting to get into the shop.
That's no big deal. Bills have a way of just paying themselves, as I understand. So it's no big deal.
Bills just paid themselves for the last 5 years. I just wing it.
All right.
By the first, the money's somehow in the bank, even though I didn't make anything, but it's there.
Yeah, and the debt continues to rise.
All right. Sounding good. So everyone's doing their thing. So I'm kind of I'm pumped. We have our first guest. Been meaning to talk to Chuck about his long-term involvement in the knife community and knife industry for a bit now. If everyone's not familiar, they should definitely go check out Chuck's Instagram. He's got a very interesting feed, lots of fishing, lots of knives. Let's jump into it, Chuck. Tell us the goods, man. How did you get here? Where did you start? What's your background? What got you into knives? As we know it.
I have had a fascination with sharp objects for as long as I can remember. It's one of those things that I was 5 when I got my first pocket knife from my grandfather. It's a little Camp King that I still have. And from there, it just went down the rabbit hole into taking apart my mother's kitchen knives and regrinding the blades, putting new handles on them, turning them into throwing knives, going to the flea market and buying any kind of slip joint or fixed blade that I could find. And I didn't really know what I was buying, but I loved them. And I started taking apart my mother's kitchen knives, and my parents thought there was something a little off with me, maybe. So they didn't really support it right off the bat.
I've been there.
They thought you were touched.
They thought maybe I was going
worried.
to turn into a serial killer.
Yeah.
But when I was 16, I brought them to a local knife show and showed them a whole room full of people interested in knives. And they said, okay, this is definitely a real thing. And I got some power tools for Christmas, and I have been at it ever since.
Now, question. Are you just saying that off the top of your head? Because I'm on your website on the knife maker's profile. Are you just reading it word for word?
No, but I
just remember it.
You've told that story a few times.
Yeah, so many people ask me how I've gotten started. And like most people, I started making fixed blades and, Japanese style because it was easy to wrap the handles. My shop used to be in a 10 by 10 shed in my parents' backyard.
Plenty of room.
I ran an extension cord out from the house, and every once in a while I tripped a breaker in the middle of doing something and have to go back in and reset it and get back to what I was doing. But
hey, we've all been there. I started on a 4x4 table. It's the same thing. Everything's connected to one surge protector, so if you turn on more than one piece of equipment, they just flew.
That's right. Absolutely.
So now, where was that knife show?
It was in Marlborough, Massachusetts. It's the Northeast Cutlery Collectors Association, and they still have shows.
Shout out to the Marlboro show.
So,
Massachusetts.
I've been to that show a couple times. I think I might have seen you at that show at one point.
Maybe. Jim Siska still does that show, and he's been making knives for like 40 years.
Wow.
So I met him there when I was 16, and I am self-taught. Nobody ever said, hey, come to my shop and let me show you how to do this. So it was all a lot of trial and error.
It's the best way to learn, really, I think.
So now, how did you? Okay, so you started then. You got folders, and fixed blades. How did you get introduced into, like your current style of machining or not machining? Because as I understand it, you're not using CNC, and you're pretty proud of that. You definitely say that a lot. But I know that you kind of come from a machining background.
Yeah,
well, my dad was a machinist at Norton Company in Worcester. My grandfather was a machinist there. So I feel like I have some machining in my blood. But it's one of those things where I was so passionate about it that I just kept working at it. So let me back up a little. So when I graduated from high school, I did 2 years of Mass Maritime Academy, where they had a machine shop there, and I got to play in there a little bit. But I decided that Mass Maritime wasn't really what I wanted to do. So in 1997, I transferred to the University of Rhode Island. And in Charlestown, Rhode Island, there was a cutlery store called Cove Cutlery. And I got a job working there on Saturdays. I got to clean knives in the store and stock inventory, and really famous knife makers from the time. And this is, late 90s, like Bill McHenry, Jason Williams, Ralph Silvidio, Frank Potter, Richard Wright, all these guys that were the premier custom switchblade makers of the time, all used to come into the store because they were all lived in Rhode Island.
That's so cool.
So that was actually my first knife show. It was in September of 1998. The owner of the store put up a tent in the parking lot, and these guys came down, and they would look at my knives, and they would kind of, yeah, you need to work on this a little. But they'd never say, oh, let me come show you how to do this. Because back then, there's no social media, there's no internet, and everybody kept their methods and their secrets to themselves. Because if you could build a better knife than them, you were taking money away from them. So it was all very hush-hush, especially back then when you were making switchblades. They were still really illegal. It wasn't like it is now where you can just order an automatic online and have it delivered to your house. Different time.
No, it still kind of is that way. Just some dealers don't give a shit about that. Like, I live in New York, and there's still dealers that won't ship anything to my house.
That's gotta be a bummer.
And I'm a knife maker.
Super hard to find these days.
Like, I'm sending these dealers knives, but they won't send them back to me.
That's kind of funny.
But back then, a lot of them were still illegal to actually make and own switchblades in a lot of these
states.
Right,
yeah. Manufacturer laws were a lot different, right?
Even now, it's a weird gray area. Because I'm trying to read up on that, and it's a pretty weird gray area when it comes to manufacturing the item. Yeah.
Where everything is illegal, pretty much, like California.
Yeah.
So there was so the owner set up a tent, and everybody came. And then, did these guys have knives at the show, or were they just they were passing through, like at this little gathering?
They had knives at the show, but I had been building some knives during the summer, and I brought them, and it was actually the best knife show I had ever had at the time, and it was an opportunity to see some of their work firsthand and look at mechanisms and try to figure out how they made them.
So what did you have at the show? Did you have folders, fixed blades, autos?
I only had fixed blades.
Okay.
At the time, and then right around in 2000 is when I started making folders, and back then it was all art knives. Everything with Damascus blades, Damascus bolsters, fully file worked, pearl or mammoth ivory handles, and they were art knives, and that's what I did for a long time. But everything I did back then was all a one-off. So I learned something new with every knife that I made.
You still seem to make one-offs, though.
I do make a lot of one-offs. Yeah. I'll cut out a blade, and I have a little piece of material left over, and I'll look at it and say, I can turn that into a folder. And I appreciate the challenge of having to design around the piece of material to make it work.
Yeah, it seems like you definitely you wouldn't have a signature model, like, the Yakuza has definitely gotten a fair amount of press, and I see you build that on and off more regularly, but you definitely you don't shy away from just building whatever you feel like.
Well, as a maker, it's exciting for me because it's something new and different. I build slip joints, lockbacks, valley songs, automatics, liner locks, frame locks, flippers, a little bit of everything, and you don't get stuck in a rut of building the same knife over and over again.
The creativity is always real fresh.
Absolutely.
So, in the 2000s, during the sort of the art knife boom, when you were making, take us through that show wise, what you were building for that period. You said, now, were you building art knives, or were you still sort of building the more tactical?
Up until 2008, I pretty much just built art knives. You know, automatics, a lot of automatics, and just a lot of fancy file work art knives. Up until 2008, because in 2008 the market crashed and nobody was buying art knives.
Hmm.
So, but let me back up. So when I graduated from college, I had a degree in aquaculture. So I used to commercially grow shellfish on Cape Cod.
What?
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
That's interesting.
In Barnstable Harbor, I used to grow quahogs and oysters. And that's no fun in February.
Yeah, the wintertime.
Oh man, I can't imagine. Oh,
So in September of like 2001 or 2002, I was living on the Cape. My parents sent me an article about a company in Worcester, which was Morgan Construction, which built rolling mills for the steel industry. And they had a program where they would send you back to school to become a machinist. And when you graduated, they would hire you and give you a full-time job.
There you go.
So my parents were like, this is right up your alley, you know. So I went to visit them. I had an interview in October of that year of 2001 and they basically hired me on the spot. I showed them some knives that I had built, and they said, okay, you guys lost me for a second. What's the last thing you heard?
Oh, we got some video. You were talking about making knives, and then the college accepted you in. They said you looked. Oh,
We got video.
yeah, there it is.
So the school, which is the Worcester Vocational High School, took me in a month after the program started. So when I went in, the kids who went to the public school, who were not part of the program for Morgan Construction, thought I was our narcotics officer.
Wow.
So
Seems
most
legit.
of them wouldn't talk to me.
they thought you were a cop.
I thought I was a narc, yeah.
Dude, that's
Wow.
rough.
That's pretty funny.
But that job in that school taught me how to run all types of machinery: lathes, surface grinders, milling machines, CNC machines, and it taught me about fit and finish and tolerances and all that stuff. And that's when I really started making folders, because I had access to that equipment. And that's really when my folder making took off.
So now obviously the totally corny question is, what was the folder that you looked at when you were messing around at school and you were like, oh, I got this, like I can totally make this? I mean, had you always been wanting to, or was it that one model?
No, it was always fixed blades started to get easy, so I wanted the challenge of building the folders.
Okay.
And one of the first things I built there as a folder was a Bally Song, because I used the surface grinder to grind the handles for inserts.
That's dope.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So you made a battle song before locking a knife.
Yeah.
Huh.
Wow, that's crazy.
What was the blade on that?
It was probably 01. I know the collector that still has it.
Oh, no shit, really?
Yeah, and then from there...
I'm trying to find the guy who still has my first, because the original
That's
owner of my
crazy.
first frame lock doesn't have it anymore, so I can't find it.
Sold it. What was the blade on the Bally song?
It was probably just it was a drop point, and
okay.
I file worked the spine of it, because I was still file working knives back then.
That's pretty neat, man. So, were you flipping at the time, or you had just seen, like, that's like a very off? I don't know. I don't know that anyone's first.
I had a cheap one of the Chinese import ones, and the handles had broken, so I had the blade. So I used the blade as a pattern for pivot hole placement and kind of design, and went from there to rebuild it to say, all right, I can make one of these.
Okay, now question, you backtracked. Can you talk more about that transition from like 2008 to 2010 in the industry? Because I got into the industry in 09. I was like 13, 14, I guess. I don't remember. But I wasn't a knife maker then. I just started to collect. So what happened? Because I like being a knife maker now for long term and trying to make this a viable long term job. I'm worried because it's like the next, in my mind, next recession or the market crash. It's inevitable.
It's like right around the corner, possible.
Yeah. So what happened during that time? I hear about it. I've heard about. Haven't really heard about the one in '08. Some more old school guys like Mel and Joe Pardue were telling me about the one like in the '90s and what happened there for once the whole transition to switchblades. What happened to the whole community from that '08 to '09 to '10 transition?
Well, in 2008, there was the real estate market crash.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah,
And
like real estate was like super cheap.
Like
People-
the real world, beyond the next world.
People lost their houses. A lot of people had adjustable mortgages, so their mortgage rates would go up after 7 years, and they couldn't afford to pay them. So people stopped buying knives or really expensive knives because their discretionary cash they were holding on to because they didn't know what was going to happen to the market or if they would be able to keep their house or what. So when that happened, before then I was able to make whatever I wanted and sell it. And when the market crashed, I had to make what was going to sell, and it necessarily wasn't what I wanted to make. So that's when I started making more tactical style knives, slab scales and frame locks with speed holes. And it took me a long time to really figure out how to transition from making art knives, which were long and sleek and fancy, to tactical knives that were folding pry bars. So
Quote unquote hard use.
Or gray turds, as they used to call them, because everything was just sandblasted on it.
Yeah.
So eventually the market has recovered, but for a good year, people weren't buying knives. I was a collector of my own knives. I was still making them, and I would put them up for sale on like blade forums, and they would just sit.
And were you full time at that time?
I was full time. I was a stay-at-home dad, and when my daughter would take a nap, I'd take the baby monitor with me and go downstairs and work for a couple hours while she took a nap. And when she got up, I was done till she went to bed at 7:30, 8 p.m. And then I'd go back down to the shop and work till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I would do that every day.
So we jumped forward. Let's jump back a little bit so we can keep on the timeline. But so you made a ballet song. You were in school, and the kids around you said, "What about the ballet song?" No. So what was the next move from the ballet song?
It was just moving into frame locks, basically. The first one I made, when you would open it, when you would close it, the lock bar would fall off of the blade because the lock bar was too short. So the geometry was wrong. So eventually I had to figure out that I have to shorten the tang on the folder blade to make the lock bar longer so it didn't fall off. But it's all trial and error. Like I wanted to make a slip joint, so I drew one up on paper, and it would snap open great, wouldn't close properly because I didn't have the geometry of the tang of the blade correct. So I would go back to the drawing board and figure out what I did wrong, go through some of my collection of slip joints that I had from when I was a kid and figure out what I needed to do to make it work properly. Sometimes I'd take apart some of the slip joints and trace out the tang pattern and then draw my own blade design on so then it would work properly.
Slip joints have like a really strange geometry. It seems like I've had trouble with them because they have that 90-degree angle that you have to get like just right.
Well, it's not the 90-degree angle. It just you have to get there's a certain ratio because open, close, and
the spring
center,
tension and everything. Yeah,
it's the ratio of being open to close. It took me about a year and a half to design a slip joint because like same thing as Chuck. I was self-taught in the beginning, so like I would just have knives in my collection. I'd take them apart, draw them out, start with there as a base design, make a knife. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay, where do I have to change it and go on from there until the mechanism worked? And as I was making stuff, it just same thing. I would make it. Oh, this isn't working. What do I have that works? When I went to slip joints, it took me a little while to design a traditional spring back slip joint that worked. And once I kind of finally got it to work, I talked with Jesse Gedraitis at USN, and he kind of shared his information with it. And I knew that if I actually built it, it wouldn't have worked right. And because Jesse helped me with some stuff, the first prototype worked great. And if, like, for example, if he didn't tell me that, I would probably have to make 2 or 3 prototypes. Just these simple things that, like, oh, it looks like it'll work. When you're looking at a real one in your hand, like, it looks exactly like that, but you don't realize, like, there's specific contact points that have to be right, which you won't actually always know if that's an accidental or it was meant to be there until you actually make the damn thing and you figure it out.
That's absolutely right. I build all my slip joints with a half stop, and I make the spring flush in all 3 positions of function, which is a lot more work than just building a slip joint with a rounded tang.
It's way easier to do open and close, and for design as well. Because if you need the midsection to contact and be flush with the spring, you have to make sure your ratios are right. Which is why, like, from what I understand, Chuck, tell me if I'm wrong. Traditionally, slip joints people worked off of existing designs. Like, I remember there's like the number 1 pattern, number 2 pattern, and so on and so forth. There was not really much originality back then with the slip joints because they were harder to design. Now we recently, like, the new trend of modelized slip joints. Now you start seeing a little bit of different stuff because the guys started using CAD and they could see what's going on. But even me, I've been using CAD for about 8 years, and it still took me a little while to make a design that I liked that didn't look like something else, because they all kind of generally look the same. You can't get too fluid, and then the blade to handle ratios have to all kind of be the same, or else the spring doesn't sit right.
Correct.
Yeah, getting a real wavy design, real organic looking with that spring bar is like impossible.
So what year were you starting to make frame locks? You say you transitioned into it, but you didn't really say when.
2007, 2008, which is when they were less expensive than the knives that I had been making, and I could make more of them and make them faster because there was less time and materials involved in each one. But it took me a while to develop a style for those that people liked, because the first few were just terrible. They just they weren't aesthetically pleasing compared to what I had been making up to that point.
And I'm assuming that automatics came after a normal frame lock.
No, I was making automatics shortly after I started making folders, because a lot of the fancy art knives I made were automatics, because that's what the trend was.
And what kind of lock mechanism were you using back then? Just a liner lock with those?
A liner lock with a latch release.
Okay.
So the rocker bar.
And those were all obviously like leaf spring fire.
Yes. All the ones I still make are leaf spring, no coil springs.
That's pretty impressive to start doing automatics that quick.
Well, it's one of those things where, all right, you have a liner lock down where you can make the mechanism work properly. Now you have to add a spring, you have to add the release, but it's one of those things that the first few didn't really work that well. You know, I couldn't get them to close properly, or they'd close and a little bit of the tip of the blade would stick out of the handle because there was something moving inside. You know, so it was all trial and error, but eventually you figure it out. And then,
now you just got to make a dual action.
I've made a few dual actions.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I used to make one where it looked like a screw that would hold the bolster down, but it was actually the button.
Nice.
So it was a little covert. There's a few of them out there.
That's the idea. Dual action concealed release, right? I mean, nobody knows it's there.
Yeah. Or I do a bolster release that can be ambidextrous, and people don't know how to open it.
So what? There's a pin that goes through the back, right, and connects both bolsters.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, it seems a little complicated because then, like, if your hand's on the other side, it's a little hard to actuate. So it means you have to support the back spine so that you can move it. I'm trying to picture, because then both scales move simultaneously in that kind of mechanism.
No, it's just a bolster.
No,
they move independently of each other.
Yeah.
Oh.
Even trickier.
Oh yeah.
So all right, so most of those you're saying those were single actions, but the dual actions obviously being even trickier.
Yeah, because you have a lot more moving parts and a lot more parts you have to hide under bolsters or under scales, and you have to fit it all in the same size knife. You can't make it too thick and bulky. You have to be able to fit it all in. It's a lot of work, a lot of planning.
So you're saying, okay, so automatics and dual actions came before the frame locks, but liner locks must have fallen in even before the automatics?
Yeah, that's what probably the first real folder that I built was a liner lock.
I'm sure all the art knives were probably liner locks, right? Or
Yes.
lockbacks? Yeah.
No, they're all liner locks.
Nice.
So when you're saying art knives that were fully dressed, I mean, obviously there wasn't Mokutai back then, but you're talking about like the heydays of like carbon Damascus?
Yeah, so basically a lot of my influence from the makers that I had met in Rhode Island was what's called the New England School of Influence. And it started with guys like Wayne Balakovic and Jim Schmidt, who were all from New England and New Hampshire. And they made their own Damascus. They used Damascus blades, Damascus bolsters, and natural handle material. And that's the New England style. So any other maker who's doing that has borrowed it from those early makers.
Huh.
Some of these guys like Jim Schmidt, his knives still sell for exorbitant amounts of money. There's one that was just listed today on a dealer's website for $12,000.
Holy moly.
Damascus blade, Damascus bolster, and stag handle that had been split. It's kind of like a goblin folder.
Huh.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
So now, did they consider those sole authorship pieces back then, or was that terminology sort of not quite there yet?
The Schmidt stuff and Wayne Balakovic. Wayne Balakovic was the third mastersmith ever in the ABS, and all that stuff that they made was all sole authorship.
Hmm.
Yeah, but from what I know, they didn't really use that term much back in the day because, like, I was like, oh, it was normal to make your own materials. That's like what I see. It's like a recent term now with the folder guys. They're like, oh, we make our own materials. It's great and new, and no one else does that. But like in the fixed blade industry and the art knife industry, that was like, if you're not making your own materials, you ain't shit.
Well, there wasn't anybody that you could go to and say, "Hey, can you make me some Damascus that I can buy?" You had to make your own.
That's another good point of fact. The Jantz catalog had not been invented yet, and a lot of those suppliers weren't there.
Well, a lot of the materials that these guys used as well, like in the mid '90s when Bill McHenry started making switchblades, you couldn't just order titanium from anywhere. You had to try to source it somewhere. Or mammoth ivory, you couldn't just go to a show and pick out mammoth ivory off of the table. You'd have to call somebody in Alaska, and they would send you samples or send it to you. You'd pick out what you wanted, and you would send them back the rest with a check. There wasn't a way for them to text you a picture of it. So a lot of it back then, it was
snail mail photos, Polaroids, like
yeah. There were. If you wanted to see what a maker was making, you either had to call him and ask for him a brochure, and he would mail you a paper brochure, or you had to go to the show.
Old school.
Real.
So that's even more of like an incentive to go to a show then. If a forger was making materials they might bring into a show, that's an incentive to travel to one of these local shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty cool. So I mean, synthetics back then weren't available, basically. Like, sure as hell couldn't just get carbon fiber or G10 like everywhere.
No, you have paper micarta, and all the Westinghouse that everybody is very
I was just about to ask about that. Yeah,
it wasn't that was just everyday material back then.
Wow, right. That's crazy. Should have stocked up on it.
Well,
resell some of that.
Did you ever? Sorry, go ahead.
I thought about stocking up on materials from Damascus makers because guys like Mike Norris aren't going to be around forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man, you're signing off Mike Norris already.
No, it's inevitable. I mean, it's good.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I saw Edgerling at the Blade Show this past year, and I tried to buy a bunch of stuff. And it's always good to see him, still doing it. But I mean, yeah, it's true. He's not going to be able to do it forever.
That's right.
Did you now? So did you ever do that? Did you ever get into it and forge your own soul authorship piece or your own Damascus for?
I did. I took a class at Mass College of Art with J.D. Smith on how to make.
Wait, Mass College of Art, like on Huntington?
Yeah.
No way! I totally. Oh wow.
And J.D. Smith still teaches there, and he was teaching a Damascus class in their continuing education department. So I took a class that was 6 weeks on how to make your own Damascus.
Wow.
Yeah, but don't you make Damascus now currently with that other dude?
I do. I'm making 304, 316 stainless Damascus. It's non-hardening, but it's also non-rusting. And
It's aesthetic.
Doing it for jewelry and stuff.
I saw you guys making some titanium Damascus the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can. We also made some copper and zirc
Oh yeah.
material.
Is that technically Mokume?
No, I get it's Zirk.
Zirkume.
Q-Zirk is what Chad Nichols calls it.
Zirkume, boom. New material.
But I think it's
Done.
considered Mokume because I think generically the traditional Mokume was anything consisting of brass, non-ferrous metals like brass, coppers, and it's not a welded process. I think Mokume it's one that, and also Mokume falls under the brazed category. So like Damascus is you're welding it together, but like the Q-Zirk, copper, zirc, copper, brass, you're not actually welding it together. The copper is melting and you're brazing it together.
I mean, titanium's non-ferric.
Yeah, but you're welding it to itself. But then it goes. Or if you're making titanium and copper, is that Mokume now because you're brazing it together?
How is Zirkume not a thing?
Because it's called Q-Zirk. The Q-Zirk is Chad's.
Whatever you want, buddy.
Yeah, if you made it yourself, you could call it that. But
Zirkume sounds pretty awesome to
Or you
me.
can copyright it and then sue people for calling it that.
That's happening right now.
Cold Steel style.
Done.
Boom.
Done. I'm
Get on
googling the
LegalZoom
patent
real
rights
quick?
right now. Yeah, I just jump on that. No free plugs.
Yeah.
No free plug.
No free plugs. All right, no free plugs. I'm just sitting in the.
Cut that out. Yeah.
Exactly. No free plugs, Jeremiah. Get on that, Chuck.
No, I might start making some of my own Damascus again, just because I have the opportunity to use the equipment to do that. You know, we have a power hammer. We're getting a brand new An Yang.
I know. I saw that.
Press.
I'm so jealous. I'm
That's
talking
pretty
to
dope.
An Yang about getting a 50 ton press as well, but I saw Chris was taking delivery of his soon.
Yeah, it should be here
So jealous.
next Wednesday, I think.
No,
So
I was looking at the An Yang 50 ton. Since I don't have a setup, if I'm buying anything, I'm just gonna get the 50 ton because I've used the 25 ton for making stainless Damascus and titanium Damascus, and for the stainless, it just doesn't. It's not enough tonnage to pattern it well. Titanium 25 tons is plenty, but if I'm buying it fresh, might as well get the 50 ton. But I was looking at the An Yang, but I don't know if I get the An Yang. The problem is I'm gonna have to turn it on its side to get it into my shop. And I don't really want to do that because it's a lot of hydraulics. There's the coal iron also makes a cool one.
They do.
I could tilt theirs like a little bit and get it into my shop because it's like 2 inches too tall. And then there's one more. It's a red one. It's the one that Chad Nichols uses. I forget the name, but that one's it's a different frame style, so it's a lot shorter because the pistons are on the bottom instead of the top. So
Yeah,
the bottom moves up.
It's an Ron Claiborne H-frame.
Yes, and the H-frames I could put in my shop, so I could just slide that one right in.
Nick, you just need to start tearing out some walls. Make that door
Yeah,
wider.
that's no big deal, man.
The door's 13 feet wide. It's just the door's only 7 feet high, and the only machine that I'd invest to get a bigger door is if I got a $70,000 like CNC machine center. Like my CNC barely fit into that door. Like I shit you not. Like you fold a piece of paper 7 times and it won't slide through.
Leave it outside. It's fine.
It was tight.
That's what credit cards are for, man. Don't worry about it.
I was like, but a credit card wouldn't have through the gap in that door in the CNC.
6 would though, no problem.
I got worried there for a second. I was like, oh my god.
Well, if you start forging during the winter, you wouldn't have to turn your heat on.
Well, that was the thing. I was going to start forging
go.
a shit ton in the winter, and through the summer months, prepping down those billets and cleaning them up. So it's like it'll supplement my cost. Plus, I had a fun ass time forging at Rob Carter's shop when I was over there. It's fun. It's been a while since I forged. I have access to a power hammer, and I did just make some stainless San Mai with the power hammer. But the power hammer is not the best for the performance stainless. The shock puts too much cracking into the billet. But the power hammer would work for titanium. I don't have one. Like I said, I have access to a power hammer.
Access.
New Jersey, still burn, right?
Yep. Hey, no free plugs.
What?
I mentioned them all the
Yeah,
time.
charging these guys.
I have to go there Monday and just here's the invoice. There's a plug. That'd be $22.32.
Yeah, just billing.
That's fine. He'll pay up.
I remember when they turned that thing on, the floor was like just shaking like violently.
Oh yeah, I forgot I took you there.
Yeah, I went with you and Rob.
Yeah.
Go. Goddamn.
Yeah, you didn't go yet. Yeah, you use that power hammer. That's not even the big one. Yeah, the floors definitely shake.
Yeah, just like
any bigger than that one, you actually have to cut a hole in the ground. Usually, to do it the right way, is you have to cut a hole in the ground, drop it into the hole, and then fill the hole with concrete.
Nice. All right.
makes sense.
Because if it's any bigger than that one, what happens is you're actually just gonna start shattering the concrete if you're sitting on it.
Yeah, you have to pour a special pad for it that's reinforced with special kind of concrete.
Yeah, like I legally can't have a power hammer in my shop, but I could have a press. Because I'm surrounded by residential area, and they would complain because their house will shake.
What you're talking about. Small things, man. You're thinking small, go big.
Just pound. Like for a week, these people are thinking it's like earthquakes are happening or what. And eventually, they're gonna find out it's me, and I'm gonna have to get rid of my hammer. So only a press is in my future.
So Chuck, you're gonna start making your own materials again, because you're currently duly employed, full time, part time at a what kind of shop?
It's Chris Plouffe Designs, and he makes custom Damascus jewelry. I 1 or 2 days a week there.
That's cool.
But I've also learned a lot there. I've learned how to TIG weld, and today I rebuilt the power hammer. We took it apart and cleaned it and lubed it, and it's ready to go. Tomorrow we're going to do some forging with some twisting and flattening of Damascus, and he'll turn it into rings.
Yeah, he got that little water jet, little Omax system.
That thing is so nice.
It's awesome, but like it's very expensive for what it is. I got test parts made on it.
What is it?
Like it's pretty much a prototyping water jet. It's a tiny water jet for like an office.
Small one.
Oh, okay.
It's $20,000, and like for $60,000, you get like a full size production machine. So it doesn't make sense to me because it's like insanely slow. It's good for jewelry because
literally double the cost, so it kind of makes financial sense.
Water jet.
Yeah, it's double the cost for a production one, except it takes 10 times as long to cut out the same thing, if not longer.
That's a weird thing to be. For like, you'd think they would have like desktop EDMs, but not water jet.
Well, it's a smaller pump, so it's mainly made for prototyping,
Yeah.
and then like the hobbyist, and then like the jewelry industry is great because like they're using like sheet copper, but like I sent them they'll quote it out, and like for a 5/30 seconds or 3/16 folder blade, it was like 20 minutes, and like a normal water jet would knock that out in under like a minute. So it just didn't make sense. I was like, well, I have the space in my shop.
Interesting.
All right.
It's the size of a small chest freezer, basically. And, it runs just like all the other ones, and runs off a CAD program, and just set it to run, and off you go. But for what we're doing, we're cutting meteorite strips.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah, for him, it's a great machine. I was watching him do it. I was looking at that machine, and like right the day after, I was like, he put on Instagram that he got one. I was like, oh, shit.
What's it like working with meteorite?
Not fun.
Not fun. It's hard. It's iron and silica.
Yeah.
It has a lot of natural cracks in it, and they sell it by the gram. It's expensive.
I've heard that it'll like rust immediately when you machine it.
Not really, but if you have one that's very high in iron, it'll rust really fast. Yeah. They're all different compositions. The cheaper
it's just
stuff
like a slurry, right? Like you never know what it is.
Yeah, the problem is like I've had stuff where there was like hidden stones inside of it, and that's a problem.
Space stones.
That's right.
Space rock. But like there'll literally be like granite inside of it, and like if you hit that with your bandsaw, that's it. Bandsaw's fucked.
Yeah.
Like I have this piece of right on the exterior. There's this little slab of granite on it, and I can tell that that's not metal. That's granite. So like I have to bandsaw around it. And I told the guy that when I was trying to buy it, I was like, "Look, I can't cut this part out. There's a giant slab of granite." And he did give me a discount when I bought it. I'm like, I can't do anything with this granite slab inside this meteorite."
Mm-hmm. So meteorite cutting. What else do you cut on that office jet, water jet you got?
Damasteel, Damascus that we make. You can cut just about anything on it.
Oh, so he uses. I mean, you guys are using like all modern materials that the knife industry uses in jewelry making.
Yes.
That's pretty neat. That sounds like a job with awesome benefits right there.
Yeah, I was checking out that Chris Booth guy. He was doing a lot of different jewelry stuff, using like jewelers grade mokume, gold, and then
we make all that too, like palladium 500 and yellow gold.
I got to talk to him about that. I need some jewelers grade mokume for something. I got to talk to him about making me a billet.
It's not cheap, but
I know. I'm familiar, and the person that the knife was for, I told him, I'm like, this is not it's like it's gonna cost more than standard gold and silver and stuff, but it's just something you don't see used in the knife industry, and I wanted to use like jeweler's grade mokume for like 7 years before I even made knives. I was like, no one ever does it like that.
So are you guys forging on demand? Like, is this stuff commercially available, or you just make it for use in your shop?
We do sell it to some other companies that make jewelry.
Oh, okay.
But the advantage of the stainless Damascus is it won't ever rust, but it's non-hardenable. So you could use it for bolsters, guards, rings, anything that you don't have to worry about hardening in the knife world. Make thumb studs out of it, thumb discs, pretty much anything you want except blades.
How long have you been working with Chris?
Since August.
Oh, so not that long at all. Okay.
Not that long.
Oh,
But
okay.
I've known him for a while. He's always been interested in my knives, and we cross paths every once in a while. So he's a really good boss. He's really good to work for. He's really flexible. He'll say, "Hey, what days do you want to come in next week?" And I say, "Oh, I got a show coming up. I'm really busy." He's like, "All right, just come in the week after."
That's pretty legit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, since they didn't let me ask this question earlier, I'm on your site and there's the spark bucket setup. Are you still using the same setup?
I am not. It worked well for a little while, but eventually in the PVC tube, you get grit and grinding dust and stuff collecting, and then you get one spark and it catches on fire, and the whole tube catches on fire and starts to melt.
Okay, so what are you using now? Because I'm trying to figure this setup right out in my shop right now, and I was going to use PVC.
I have 5-gallon buckets under each of the grinders now, and over my main grinder that I use, I have a range hood that is vented directly outside. So any fine particle dust gets sucked up through the range hood and sent outside. It's also got LED lights built into it.
Yeah, well, I have one of those air filters right over my grinder, the 5-gallon bucket under, but I want to set up backs under my grinders. I was thinking you using the setup you have, except making making it higher so that the PVC pipe is only like 6 inches long instead of like 2 feet long.
If I were doing it again, I would use dryer vent pipe, which is stainless steel.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how to use that. I saw that at Home Depot, and I was trying to come up with ideas, but I don't know how that stuff really works.
It works well, and they also sell one that's flexible, so you can bend it around if you don't want to just use straight pipe right into the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
But you keep an inch of water in the bucket. The tube has to go down and sit about an inch above the water, and any heavy stuff goes right down into the water, and the vacuum sucks out anything fine particles that are light.
Yeah, I've been trying to make my setup a little cleaner.
If you wore a respirator more often, you wouldn't have to
wear it all.
I don't know. It's a problem. Yeah. Like the only time I wear the respirator is when I'm actually sitting and grinding a bunch. So I don't mind wearing the respirator. I just don't like putting it on for like quick touch-ups. And I do quick touch-ups all day, like shortening some screws.
It's gonna come back to haunt you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm young. I got a lot of time in this. So the steel ain't bad, but like titanium, people underestimate it. Like I know
Or
guys
if they're
who
soft,
only
they'll bounce right back.
guys
Yeah,
only know. I mean, guys only usually wear respirators that I know like on G10 composites, but like titanium is worse because it's a lot of vanadium, heavy metal poisoning. Then some of these stainless steels have a lot of vanadium in them too.
That's right. You know, I go down into my shop, I put it on, and I'm used to wearing it all the time. That and some hearing protection, and all day long I'm used to wearing it. So
Yeah,
eventually you get used to it.
I need to get on the hearing protection part because when I'm wearing my main office desk, the CNC is like 12 feet to the right, and I'm getting like early onset tinnitus in my right ear. I gotta get that. I think so. So I gotta start taking care of PPE in the shop.
Just get those shooting muffs. Just get like a nice pair of over-ear muffs. You'll be fine. You don't have to put in earplugs.
Yeah,
That's
but I
what-
wear headphones
Muff.
all day, so like I don't know how to figure how to
Yeah,
make
that's
it work.
worse because then you're blasting music in your ear and there's ambient sound coming in.
It's not even that. It's only the right ear. 'Cause the right ear is facing the 6,000 RPM like whine of the CNC, and that's definitely what's been killing my right ear.
You could get earmuffs that have Bluetooth built into them, and you could listen to music that way.
I thought about that.
There
I
you
saw those at Home Depot.
Or you could just
Or like
tape
noise
the earphones to the
canceling one?
inside of the earmuffs.
Yeah. If you drill holes inside of your
Look,
ears
I have
and then put
a
the buds
big
inside
ass
there, you
head.
should be
Okay,
good.
I'm limited to the space.
Right. I'm sure technology has a way. There. Make it up, Nick. Make it work. Stop going
I'm
deaf.
trying to make my shop safer. I got air filters around the shop, but I need like.
I got
started
some
setting up
cigars.
the
Never
They're
seen
regular
good.
anything like that.
What are you in the
Yeah,
grinding
never.
room? It doesn't have to be in the main
as long
shop.
as you breathe through the cigar, it should be fine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
You
exactly
filter
it.
Filter
the titanium through the cigar.
The cigar
and
stays in my
whiskey.
mouth all day unlit, and it filters through all the tobacco. And at the end of the day, I light the cigar,
Okay.
and then I smoke it all through as a resin.
I got you. No, I got you.
You know,
Your
honestly,
king's
if you're
cut.
Put
if
this
you're
on
literally
fire.
smoking the cigar while grinding, you should be fine,
Huh?
technically, right?
It should be good.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a filter.
Right.
It is. Otherwise, you're gonna be
Maduros,
like,
filter it out, no problem. Like real good. It's
you
real
may
good.
possibly be smoking the titanium, but
Look, man.
Which has happened because when if I'm smoking a cigar in my grinding room and I set it down on the side while I grind, and I keep smoking the cigar, I could tell at the ash. I see little snap, crackle, and pops of the titanium dust. Which that is a thing.
It's
Come on.
It's a cigar and a sparkler.
Yeah, and then when I do that, I start getting nervous. I'm like, oh, is this a good
It's
idea?
weird. The air's on fire. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I'll put it right back next to the grinder and keep grinding the handles.
Nick, do you have a door between your grinding room and the rest of the shop?
Right now I have a shower curtain. No, I had a door and I took it down because
it's literally a shower curtain.
It's literally a shower curtain.
Well, no, it was the reason I took down the door because I had to get a big piece of equipment in the shop into that room, and I took it out. So now I was just testing out the curtain thing, but I'm gonna put in. I already ordered it. Actually, I should install it. You know when you go to like a warehouse, they have those like thick plastic strips.
That
Between-
overlap? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm putting there.
Like a fan cooler door.
Yeah, I don't want to put a door in there because like my dad's gonna start working on me, so I don't want it to be directly blocked between areas.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like flats in a cooler.
Yeah, I just made a mistake when I was building that grinding room. I should have listened to my dad when we were building it. I should have made a strip of glass along one of the walls so I could see the rest of the shop.
Yeah.
But
When
I
the house catches on fire, you can run out there and do something about
well,
it.
that's the thing, because I have to keep peeking my head out the door if the house is running to check, just to see that light on the house if the program is done, if there's an alarm, if the machine crashed. So I'm gonna put that that warehouse curtain or whatever it's called.
We were just talking about knocking out walls, man. Make space in there. Customize that shit.
I have space. I got like 1,000 square feet that I don't use. I got a fucking bedroom and a living room and a kitchen in there.
It'd be nice if you had a spare bedroom, though. I gotta be honest. You know,
I have
the
a
floor's
tent.
not bad, but
I have a tent whenever you're over.
uh,
And an
Yeah,
air
it'll have a
conditioner.
lot less room once I move all my equipment in.
yeah, right.
That's whenever you fucking decide where you're moving. I have a 700 square feet you could have. Just get your ass to New York.
700 square feet.
Yeah, that's a big ass shop.
I think Elijah would spend too much time in the city looking at Rolexes.
Possibility.
Rolexes and other things.
Other
Yes.
things and stuff. So Chuck, tell us about this Marlin. Oh boy.
Nice transition.
The
Really nice
switchblade.
transition.
Yeah, Yeah, let's go back to we were talking about your website, and I remember this
I'm
knife
scrolling
in
through the site.
particular because
I'm actually on
I
your
saw
website
this
right now.
knife like a few years ago, and that was the inspiration to re-hit you up after a bit. But tell me the story behind the Marlin.
So,
Automatic.
it's a marlin when it's closed, and the fin is the rocker release, and when it's open, it's a swordfish. And
Surprising.
after I built it, I took a picture frame. I mounted a couple of wooden pegs so it looked like it was a mounted fish, and I tied a little fishing fly and mounted it on the bottom so it looked like that was the fly that caught the fish. And I sold the whole thing at Blade Show in like 2004.
Okay, now where do I find this on the website? I want to look at this thing now.
Go to autos, or it should show up. See, I was just talking to Elijah about this, but I think that there should be more concept art knife, not art knife, but like pieces of art that incorporate interesting knives like that. Because I think the Marlin is such a cool idea. Like obviously it's a little hokey, but it's so much fun. Like it's just like whatever. Like it's a cool build for a switchblade, and the fact that it's a swordfish when it's open is just great.
Yeah, so
go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to see what we're talking about, because you should look this up, go on Chuck. Can you say your last name? I can't say it.
Gedraitis.
Gedraitisknives.com, and then go to folders and automatic knives, and you'll see it. You should definitely check it out. It's a pretty unique build.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, that's like another sign that you just don't give a fuck, like whatever. Just build what's cool, you know. Build what's
what
neat.
you want.
A friend of mine, Steven Ozlewski, who started making folders in like 2001, 2002, was originally a jeweler, and he would build models for the jewelry company, like compacts or anything that was going to be mass produced. Figures for Disney, things like that. So he started making knives, and he started making figural knives, and that kind of inspired me to do one, where he would carve mermaids into the whole knife would look like
That's
a mermaid,
crazy.
and there was a switchblade, and the release would be in the upper arm of the mermaid. He did a king and queen set, just incredible carving skills, and that kind of inspired
really
me.
neat.
So. I have Jeremiah and I have talked about this. I have a design drawn up to do another automatic similar to the Marlin, but it's a shark. So I
love your description of it on the website. It just says when the knife is closed, it's a Marlin. When the knife is open, it's a swordfish. That's great.
It's direct.
Yeah. That's all you need to know.
we were talking about that. I'm down. I think that'd be very cool to do a shark one.
See, there should be a photo of it closed, but I see. It doesn't have to be.
You got to use your imagination, Nick.
Yeah.
So where did that end up, Chuck? Where is that knife?
I have no idea. A collector bought it, and
it
disappeared.
Man.
I'm sure he's listening, and if you are, sir, please contact us.
Yeah, put that up on. I mean,
Bladeology Club.
Social media has brought us so many good and bad things in the industry, but I really, it's not a plug, but I really did get back into the YouTube. Being in Vegas full time and just recording every knife that comes through the door and putting it up on YouTube makes me feel better that these things will have a home forever. Yeah, like they'll forever have a home on the internet. Like something like this is so cool, and we didn't have YouTube then, but like again, you might never see this knife again, which is very unfortunate. If it had a 30-second video on YouTube, it would last forever, But a lot of those private collectors, they don't have social media. They aren't interested in that. And just really cool pieces like that just go away, or worse, they get taken.
A lot of the art knives that I built, if you look around, there aren't any available on any dealer's websites. It's only the newer stuff that I've built within the last 5 years or less. So I don't know if there's a trend to go back to making art knives, or
I think there might be, honestly.
So, well, at least if not art knives specifically, I mean, certainly something out of the standard norm we have now. I mean, something towards the more, and I use that word gently, but not fanciful, but maybe, I don't know, like more interesting than our standard frame locks we have now. I mean, certainly, obviously, you can see that in your designs, Elijah, and other other blade cutouts. I hope to see stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of those like quote unquote artsy type designs of mine, like that's just I can't stop. I can't decide when it's done, so it just keeps going until it's big.
Okay, so I'm on your site right now, and I'm looking at your art knife section. And you have the stepped Art Deco dagger, with the turtle shell scale and the bronze. Now, how'd you grind that? You didn't grind that blade. I'm assuming you file worked the blade.
Let me pull it up.
It's a stepped Art Deco dagger. It's on the art knife section.
That looks file worked for sure.
Yeah, there's no way to grind that.
Oh, there is.
I've
actually done it.
The one with the tortoise shell, I milled it.
Oh,
and
wow.
then cleaned it up with files.
Okay, because I could tell the backspace, because that was definitely milled. Or I guess back in that day, you guys called it a backstrap, because it went the entire length.
Yeah, or the back bar. And most of my knives back then did go the entire length.
Yeah, that's what, because I'll talk to Joe Pardew a lot. And he'll call it all backstrap. He said, "Oh, it should go the entire way." This and that, but like it limits you on designing. Like, only one of my designs could go the entire way, and it's still a flipper, so it can only really go to the rotation of the flipper tab. Besides that, it limits you a lot.
So if you're still on that art knife page, if you click on that secret window folder,
the hell do you see that?
Secret window.
Oh, the knife is actually called the secret window.
Secret window.
Like a secret page.
Oh, gotcha.
That is the perfect example of the kind of art knives that I used to make back in the day. Like the blade is Darrow Meyer Turkish twist that I forged to shape.
That backspacer is insane.
Yeah, that's really fucking
pearl
cool.
inlays. And
That's some really good. You don't see black lip like that anymore. That's some really good black lip.
Wow.
And there's black lip under all the bolsters. And there's no bolster screws showing. Just
There's about 40 colors in that black lip. That's crazy.
Shoot, you're right. I didn't even notice that. There's no hardware in the bolster.
Yeah, and gold
wow.
thumb stud set with a garnet or a ruby. File work, the screw heads, and those are heat colored.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of
That's pretty dope.
Now, did you engrave the Day of the Dead knife?
No, a friend of mine from Rhode Island did that. It was like the second or third knife he had ever engraved.
Yeah, I thought it was gold. I was like, I didn't know you did that. And I was like, oh, that's bronze.
It's bronze.
I was like, holy shit.
That's basically what do you call it, a puffin? Or
That's a puffin.
pelican? That's a puffin, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, this one was made in 2012. Well, at the end of 2012.
Yeah.
So right before we all were supposed to die. Is that why you made
That's
Chad in that
pretty cool.
knife?
No.
Oh, in 2012, yeah.
You never really see Chad Nichols mosaic stuff. He makes it, but I don't see anyone ever buy it and make it on a knife.
It's because it's a high carbon and everybody wants stainless because it's maintenance free.
I think Mark mentioned some guy in Israel, possibly, that makes Damascus that's like insane. It's like some wicked stuff. Are you familiar with anybody like that, Chuck? Does that ring a bell?
No. Not at the moment.
I think he said Israel. Yeah.
It might be tough to get it too.
Oh yeah, very.
Now, Chuck, would you consider the what do you call it? The Subhill Fighter, the Bally song, would you consider that an art knife, even though it was a Bally song?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was about to say, I know which one you're talking about. I consider that an art knife. Because that's not like a functional Bally, and I don't know, the way it was, I consider that an art knife, but not like a full art knife. Well, the one that I saw wasn't as full art knife, like, because the materials weren't there and stuff like that. But the type of work he put into that knife, I'd still consider an art knife.
All right, story. Let's hear it. What are we talking about for the people who have no idea?
I can't find a photo here.
Chuck, how'd you go build that?
I had a customer send me a picture of a Loveless Subhill Big Bear fighter, and he said, "I want you to make a Bally song inspired by that." I said, okay, I appreciate the challenge. So the blade started off as 5/16 thick D2, 3 inches wide, because the lugged guard is integral to the blade. So I needed to have a piece wide enough. And then I milled down an 1/8 inch on either side so that it looked like an actual guard on a fixed blade. And then The handles were 416 stainless with stag inlays, and it was engraved on all the bolsters on the handles, and it was double-edged. And the blade was 6 or 6.5 inches long, ground on a 5-inch wheel, and then all hand sanded, hand rubbed.
Mm-hmm.
And it went to a collector in Canada, and I mailed it to him in pieces, and it was confiscated by customs.
Oh,
Wait,
oh.
so that knife, but I saw one in Oh, no, never mind. Jeremiah showed me photos. Was that the only one you ever made?
That's the only sub-hilt I've made. I'm approaching my 200th Bally song, and I've thought about doing another one that's a little bit smaller.
You should. I feel like one like it was so unique. It should be something like that should be out there.
Like
On
I
your
even,
website, where are the Bally's at? I can't find
He
them.
doesn't have them. I was trying to
Oh,
find
Not
them.
okay,
up
yeah.
there.
you know why I don't have them on my website? Because I have
Too
a
many?
I have a guess.
I have a PayPal logo on my website where you used to be able to buy through
Yeah.
PayPal, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
are not Bally Song friendly, and they said you have to take those off of your website if you're going to use our services.
Wow.
That's what dealers are for, right, Jer?
There you go.
I tried, dude.
Okay, now when we're talking about battle songs, before I forget,
Yeah.
sorry, Jeremiah.
Oh, good.
When I first found your work like 5-6 years ago, what I thought was unique. What is the story behind the Swiss Army battle song? I don't know if Jeremiah even knows what that is.
I don't know about
No,
this.
I know that one. I know that one.
Okay, Google the get Chuck G Swiss Army battle song.
That's another great Bally song story, dude.
So I had a one of those Swiss cards that
Uh-huh.
comes with the toothpick and the tweezers and the fingernail file and all that stuff. And
I used to love those when I was younger.
I'm like, I'm going to build a Swiss Army Bally song.
Nice.
And I just because I wanted to do it, I bought the Red G10. I designed a blade that had a bottle opener built into it, and then I milled the pockets underneath the Red G10 so that way the implements from the Swiss card would fit into it.
And then you put the ruler on the back. So if
There's
you go
a-
on Blade HQ, you'll find it. But if
I
you go
see
on
it.
Blade
Yeah, that's
HQ,
awesome.
Blade HQ's country of origin says Switzerland.
Really?
Yeah, like, look, it says model Swift, country of origin Switzerland, and then he
That's
like
great.
copyrighted the Swiss Army Knives logo with a G.
Yeah,
That's
I see
right.
it.
I put a G in it for my last name. And
That is awesome.
Yeah, I saw this like years ago. That's like the first thing I ever saw from you, and then I just was like, oh, it's awesome. But and then when I met you a few years ago, actually, and then was scrolling through your stuff again, I found it again. I was like, oh shit, he made that. But every time I see you in person, I always forget to ask you about it. So I'm like this, like you use the same knives. You pretty much just copyrighted the Swiss Army knife system and made a battle song with the bottle opener, the ruler on the back,
It was a pin.
the tools.
That's nice.
And the hardest part was making so the tools would stay in it while you flipped it,
Oh wow, I can't imagine.
because otherwise they're going to want to go sailing out and you'll lose them forever. So I put detent
Tension.
balls in so they would snap into place.
Nice.
Now, is the ruler accurate?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I sat there and used another ruler, and I sat there by hand with a little hacksaw and cut in the increments, and then filled them in with white paint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's another knife you guys should look up. Blade HQ has it on their site. It's all out of stock, but just for photos, just look up Swiss Army battle song Chuck G. You'll find
Gedraitis.
I can't say it. I get tongue tied.
Nick.
And you'll
So-
see it. It's pretty neat knife.
I used to make a lot of art Bally songs that were just over the top, whatever I wanted to build. And the trend right now is everybody's making them they're very flippable, but they also all look the same. So
I
I
wonder.
think I'm going to start making more art Bally songs again.
There you
Yeah,
go.
man.
I wonder
I'm
how
so down.
how angry Victorinox would be if you did like a production run of these, like a limited production run.
I don't know.
Let's find out.
It's not something that they really make. They don't make Bally
Yeah.
songs, and it's
If he made them all handmade custom, they wouldn't bother him unless you got
Yeah,
it
it's not-
produced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
I think it's a big great idea.
Like 6 of them would. Yeah, I bet that wouldn't be a problem.
Now, how old are your kids? I saw they started working at the shop. Blade HQ site reminded me because they're making the beads.
They are. So, but my kids want a Nintendo Switch, and I said, well, if you want one, you're gonna have to earn the money for it. So I said, well, I've had my daughter help me make some beads in the past. So I said, all right, let's make some beads. So I take all my scrap handle material, and my daughter laid out all the pieces that were 1 by 1 square. My son cut them out on the bandsaw. I glued them all together. My son drilled holes in all of them, and I put them on a dowel in my cordless drill and turned them all on my grinder. And so they're for sale, and the money goes to my kids for their Nintendo Switch.
Oh yeah, you still have some for sale, so you can plug that.
That's pretty cool.
If anybody wants a custom bead made by father and son and daughter, go check out Chuck's Instagram.
Yeah, I tried to get them into the shop. I'm like, look, I have all this equipment. I know how to build all kinds of stuff. Let's build stuff. I try to get my son to build slingshots and things like that with me, and he has no interest whatsoever. But he thought it was kind of cool using the bandsaw and the drill press to make stuff. And I said, well, come down whenever you want.
That's like grow into it too thing. Like as soon as they're like
one day he's gonna get it.
Yeah, he'll be like, oh man, that is so cool. Like that is legit.
I'm like, come make knives, come make, throwing stars, whatever you want to make. I'll help them.
There we go. Get some shurikens going.
Yeah.
Shurikens.
Yeah, I'm in the opposite boat with my father right now. He's in the shop now helping me make stuff. It's so I could see where your kids are standing at where they don't want to go work with their father because me and my dad are just butting heads the entire time.
Well, my daughter and I, we used to design knives because she's an artist. She likes to draw and paint, and so I had her design some Bally Song handles for me. And Josh actually bought the Bally Song from me at Blade Show a few years ago. And it was a Tonto design Bally Song, but the handles had flowers on all of them.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I had used the carbide burr to cut the petals, and I set a detent ball in the center of it. And then I anodized the handles pink and polished off all the flats, so only the cutouts were colored, and they look like little pink lotus flowers all the way down the handles.
That's super neat. Huh. I think we still got pictures of that. I mean, in the catalog somewhere. Yeah, do more dress Ballies. Those are cool, man. Like nobody is doing like far out stuff like that. And I think it's important to note that so there's an interesting thing about your Ballies that they're all numbered. I mean that's not the interesting thing. But they're all one-offs, right? They're all totally, within reason different.
Correct. They're all different. When I first started making them, I had collectors who collected certain numbers. Like there was one guy who only collected number 8s.
I can imagine 007, 13.
Yeah. Dudley Dawkins collected 007s, so he got number 7. And so I just started numbering all of them, and I'm up to, I think, 196. And they're all
That's
different.
Super neat.
Early on, they were just made with barrel pivots. And then I had collectors say, can you put bushings in these? And I had to figure out how to put bushings in them. And now all of them have bronze bushings. And I've started using some stainless bushings.
So bushings and washers?
Yes. No bearings.
No bearings. You don't like bearings, or you don't feel like they flip well?
I feel like they're too fast, that you don't get the friction that you need in a Bally Song, because for certain tricks, you don't want them to be too fast. And I feel like the bearings make them too fast. They don't get enough, what's the word I want to use?
Resistance?
That's exactly the word. They don't have enough resistance.
I can see that. I definitely, there's a different sound to bearings too. Like there's a different sort of clacking that happens as opposed to like a nice bushing and washer setup.
And the
also,
amount
whatever,
of
bearings can go to hell.
The amount of flipping that these guys are doing in their Ballies, they'll probably sit there for a couple of hours at a time. That if you don't put a hardened washer in, you're gonna eat away and make a bearing race in your titanium handles, and then your tolerances are gonna be off.
Yeah, I had to redesign my Bally to accept the washers. Because I was making, I was like, yeah, it should be fine. I was like, nah, I'm pretty sure these are going to need steel washers. So I have to kind of do some moving around so I can fit them in there.
Yeah, and depending on how thick you want to make the handles, you don't necessarily have the room for the pockets.
Yeah, so I pocketed the blades to get that all in there.
Yeah, I don't want to have to do that.
I'm thinking that this Balisong, asymmetric Balisong design I got is gonna be flippable. I think.
The Gedraitis?
Yeah, for the most part. I got the prototype in last night actually, so it seems like it's gonna work. So I'm pretty excited about that.
I could see that surprising a lot of people in its flippability. So
Yeah,
even though
the handle's straight enough.
go ahead. It's not even the straight. It's that like I think the shoulders near the pivots might work well for like low style finger twirls and chaplains. Like I think that might actually facilitate an entirely different style of trick that I hadn't really thought of while looking at it in the past.
Mm-hmm. You spoke Chinese. I have no idea what that is.
I know. I know what you
Copy
meant.
that.
You're good.
Chaplains.
Yeah.
Charlie style.
Charlie style. So Chuck, so over the years you've consistently made ballet songs. When you started, when you marked the first one, 001, when was that? Was that in 2000 when you said you first made the one, or like you worked on it with some prototypes, or what?
No, back then I didn't prototype anything. I would draw it up on paper and make a working paper template, and then just transfer it to steel and like I'm gonna build this. I mean, that's kind of what I do now. I still draw everything out on paper, old school, and I have boxes and boxes of templates. And sometimes I mix and match blades, but back then I said I'm gonna build a ballet song. I have an idea of how it works. I didn't really know how to press fit pins into the blade, so I would have to taper them and then peen them a little bit to get them to stay in, and it was a whole lot of learning involved to get to the point
That
where
seems
I am
like
now.
so much more work than just pressing it in with an arbor press.
Yeah, I didn't know that, how to do that back then.
How do you press fit in a stop pin at a ballet?
Just
Like-
ream it undersized and use the arbor press. But it's the same thing like when you were at my shop and you're like, oh, because when like the heat treating method I was using when I was quenching 3 to 4 blades at a time. Elijah, you were like, "Oh, that just makes sense." I'm like, "Yeah, but I guarantee that if you didn't see me do it, you probably wouldn't have done it that way." It makes sense when you see someone do it, but until someone shows you, it's just that you're not going to realize it.
Pulling it out of thin air is
I would've
entirely
figured.
different.
Yeah, I know you press fit them in, but like, how do you gauge the depth? Do you have like a jig to make it the same on each side?
I use a standard length stop pin,
Yeah.
so it's 3/8 of an inch, and if you're using an 1/8 inch blade stock, and then it sticks out an 1/8 inch on either side.
Hmm.
Gotcha.
So you can just use a piece of scrap 1/8 inch
Yeah.
G10 as a stop, so that when you're pressing them in, they're the same length on both sides.
That's simple enough.
Yeah.
So the Tang pins versus Zen pin on a ballet. I mean, what number was your first Zen pin? Because I mean, I would imagine you basically built Tang pins until we started seeing the Zen pin.
I've done a few of the Zen pins. I like the Tang pin better, though. I think that it's a larger diameter pin. I think that the sound it makes when it's flipping is better, and it's easier to control the distance or the spacing between the handles.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, and then flex for the latch when it closes. Or do you feel like it's either way? It crunches it and that's fine.
I think it's fine either way, but I just prefer the Tang pins.
There's something traditional and aesthetic about seeing the Tang pins. I mean, to each his own, but that's kind of how they started. So I appreciate Tang pins.
Well, I think for people who are serious flippers, when you have Zen pins, you have that little tab that sticks out on the tang of the blade, and that can get in the way. Whereas if it's a Tang pin, that's usually polished and rounded, and it's smooth, and it's not going to get caught on your fingers, or if you have rings on, it's not going to get caught on your rings. I find that it's sticks out too much, and sometimes it takes away the proportions of the knife when it's in the closed position. It makes the whole thing look longer than it really is.
Mm. All right. So what's your favorite Bally over the years? Like, would it be the Subhill, or would it be something that we haven't even seen?
It's probably something that you haven't seen. I mean, I've done
Oh,
a
man.
lot of them. They're all so different. I don't know. It's hard to choose one. There is one on Blade HQ's website it's a Yakuza Bally song. It's got a Damascus blade, titanium handles, and carbon fiber inserts. And I think actually the inserts are lightning strike carbon fiber.
Whoa.
Can't find it. Because I was actually on their website. Yakuza. Yeah, Yakuza only shows up for your fixed blade, and your folder is currently on their site
Let me see if I can find it.
in the Mayor Co. Oh, one of these Yakuzas look familiar. I feel like I saw it in Kentucky, possibly.
So if you go to my personal page on Blade HQ, if you go under custom knives and go under my name, it's on the 4th page. It's the number 111 Bally song.
So weird. My computer's not loading that website.
I haven't done any Bally songs with...
Did you guys ban it off the site? Child lock it? I just wrote 111 Ball song in the search and I found it. I see it. You dovetailed in the inlays.
Yeah. And that one's got Zen pins.
Yeah, that's what I'm running Zen pins. I always fucking forget which one's which. Zen pins are the ones that are in the handle.
Have you ever done one pinless construction?
That has to be something that's done channel. Which actually, have you done channel Ball songs?
I've done 4 channel Bally songs. You still have to have one tank pin in, the rear tank pin.
Yeah.
But I've done 4 of those in titanium, and they were not. There was a lot of planning because once you mill the slot, you gotta have some flex in the handle. So then you have to put an insert in, so you can drill the rest of your holes and not have the handles flex on you while you're drilling holes.
So how much interaction with the Bally Song maker community have you had over the years? Like, have you talked to a lot of other makers? I mean, in and out of it, I mean, you've certainly been doing it long enough to cross paths with other people, or is it just kind of like, as a knife maker, it's a knife thing and not necessarily a Bally Song thing?
It's more of a knife thing. It's not necessarily a Bally Song thing. I've never met Chris from 29 Knives. I've talked with Bally Ballistic.
Oh, Sean.
I've talked with Sean only through Instagram. I've never talked to him on the phone. We've just texted back and forth. So it's one of those things where I know of them, but I've never really talked to them.
Right. Just part of that even more exclusive Cool Kids Club.
So, Nick, in your episode, you talked about going to the New York show, and it was still in New York.
No, I didn't. I said I didn't go to it when it was still in New York. I've missed it from what I understand, I missed it by like a year or 2. My first year was 2009.
Okay. So,
I guess 2009, I was 13 my first year. Does that make sense? 10 years? Yeah, 2009. I never experienced it in New York. Unfortunately, I live in New York. But I remember everyone told me it used to be in Times Square, if that was right.
It was in Times Square at the, right on Times Square and Broadway. It wasn't the Marriott.
That just seems weird to me.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Apparently, Marsh said that in the that other podcast.
That was the first real main show I'd ever been, or first big show I'd ever been to. I used to go into New York City with my mom for a weekend, we'd go to a Broadway show and we'd go to the knife show, and I'd go and buy mammoth ivory and buy some materials and, you know, hold on to that material till I found the right knife for it to go on. But starting to go to those shows, I would meet guys like Edmund Davidson and
Legend.
Rick Fields, who used to be an ivory dealer and he used to do scrimshaw.
I'm only familiar with Ric Flair.
No.
Different one.
Did
Close.
you say Rick Fields?
Rick Fields.
Fields, okay.
And who else? Walter Brand and
Oh, yeah.
Frank Santafonte and
Old school dudes.
old school dudes, Warren Osborne and Joe Caios and all those guys. And I'd show them knives that I was working on, and you know, they'd give me little tips and stuff. But I've been doing this a long time. You know, I've been in the knife world for, you know, building knives for 25 years. And the biggest thing people are surprised about when they meet me is they think I'm an old guy. Just because I've been making knives for so long. I'm 43.
Just for the record.
Yeah. So I've been with this
Just
a
a
long
record,
time.
not a new maker.
Yeah, right. Just the maker, but doing this. Okay, so how many? That's the question. How many blade shows?
This will coming up will be my 18th blade show.
Wow, that's
fucking
crazy.
Crazy.
That's extreme right there.
18 with a table, 19 because when I graduated from college, or when I was about to graduate, I flew down for my first blade show in 2000, and
Fucking A.
just showed up. I got a VIP pass, and back then they would actually get you in for free.
Huh.
You have twice as many as I did. I got 8. I went my first year was that last year they had was the smaller room. The following year they opened up another whole section.
Yep, and it's gotten bigger ever since. The first year I went down, I had dinner with Jerry Rados, famous Damascus maker, and a bunch of other makers, and they're like, "Hey, you should get a table here." And in 2001, I got my first table.
What was the spread for the first blade show? What'd you have? Like a little bit of everything, or did you just bring folders?
I used to bring a little bit of everything. I was like a schizophrenic knife maker. I'd have a lockback and a slip joint and some fixed blades and an auto and ballet songs, and I would basically just cover all the bases and have anything that anybody could ask for. And I'd show up with 10 or 15 knives. My first show was in row 24, all the way in the nosebleed section. And I learned real fast that like the first 5 rows, people who brought cash would buy knives. And then from row 5 to 15, they would use their credit cards. And after that, they were broke. So if you were in the way back, you didn't really sell any knives. And nobody had lotteries back then. It wasn't a thing. You didn't have to win the chance to buy somebody's knife.
That changed everything.
Yeah.
Win the chance to give somebody else your money. Yay.
I think it was my second blade show. I think it was like 2002 or 2003. My table was right behind Bob Blum. And
Wow. That is something else.
people lined up at his table, and as soon as he got there, he'd put out a knife, and somebody would just pick it up and not put it down. And he would do that with 4 or 5 knives that he had brought, and everybody would just throw money at him, and then he would just hang out the rest of the weekend.
Huh.
It's pretty awesome.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
it was
legit.
cool.
Yeah, no. So now it's a little different. Now it doesn't matter what spot you're in. You just post on Instagram, "I'll be here," and people specifically make a list to go to the makers they want to see.
Yeah. And then now everybody waits around to buy knives to see if they get pulled in a lottery.
Right. And you still, I mean, 2 things. I saw you in Kentucky. Dude, you still bring like slip joints, ballet songs, lockbacks. I mean, you still brought a fair selection to that show.
Yeah, you still bring a spread. I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, like
you used to be
you're
a
still at it.
schizophrenic.
You're not like, oh, I just brought one type. Like I saw you brought a whole bunch. I mean, you weren't afraid to just like cover the bases on that one.
It's one of those things that if you have the type of knife that somebody's looking for, maybe they'll buy it from you. But if you only bring one style of knife and they're looking for something specific, and it also shows my skill level that I can build a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important
Skills
too.
are overrated.
Use of skill number 437. And you still collect. I mean, I see you. You know, you own knives. Like a lot of knife makers give up and are like, I don't care. But I mean, you have personal knives that aren't yours.
Yeah, I mean, I still buy things that I think are things that I aspire to. Like I recently bought a Charles Marlowe bamboo balisong, and just the fit and finish on it is incredible. And you know, it's something that you aspire to have your knives be like. You know, and guys that I looked up to back then who were my influences. You know, I owned some of their knives. Sometimes I sell them, you know, to buy another knife, but you know, I'm still a collector at heart, you know.
Yeah, the collector in me
still in
died
love
after
with
a while. I'm
knives.
surprised you're still into it.
Still love into knives, and I still carry one every day. No matter where I go,
All right.
I always
What are you
have
carrying today?
You must be
You gotta ask
carrying.
So for the past couple of months, I was carrying a Benchmade 943-1, the carbon fiber Osborne with the clip point blade. But I've recently started carrying one of my own knives because people always ask, "Oh, you make knives? What do they look like?" And instead of just showing them pictures on Instagram, so I made myself a Axis Lock Puffin.
Oh.
Because the
Wait,
Axis Lock patent has
Wait, like Omega Springs and everything?
Omega springs and everything.
Get the heck
Nice.
out of here.
And I
that
made
must
this-
have been a pain in the ass.
I made the springs out of titanium
What?
What?
Huh.
because Benchmade makes them all out of stainless, and
Yeah.
they have a tendency to break. So I made mine out of titanium wire.
The company that shall not be named.
Yeah, no kidding. They kind of upset a couple of people. Oh, whatever.
Just a bit.
An axe? That's interesting. Huh. Okay.
Huh.
I guess that's a pretty friendly carry knife. Like it's not, you can whip that out and it's not gonna like, no one's gonna think you're gonna hold them up or nothing.
Yeah, it's got marbled carbon fiber scales, you know, CPM 154 blade that I tumbled, black Damascus pocket clip, and eventually somebody will really want it, and they'll probably buy it right out of my pocket, and then I'll have to make myself another one.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's what happened with me, my original carry, and then I someone wanted to buy it out of my pocket, and then I finally made my own carry as a knife that was a blem. So I was like, I'm not selling this. Essentially, I drilled something off. I made it like 4 years ago, and it's so off center that like it doesn't rub on the side, but you can't put a piece of paper between the blade and the frame. It's way off. I still had offers on it, but I'm not letting that one out the shop. Someone's going to eventually resell it and be like, oh, it's a perfect knife, and no, it ain't.
Yeah.
Blade centering.
I need to make myself a perfect knife with, like, exotic materials for, like, as they say, the filthy casuals. When it's like, oh, what do you do? I make knives. Oh, okay, that's cool. Can I buy one? I'm like, no, it's like $1,000 knife. It's like, oh,
Nah, kids,
okay, never mind. I'm like,
Well, the problem with doing that is that you build something with exotic materials, and then you say it's either too fancy to carry, or you say I have so much time and money invested in this, I would rather have the money.
no, well, right now,
I can
I'm
build
working on a
another
2-inch
knife.
frame lock. So a 2-inch frame lock doesn't take that much exotics.
Well, yeah.
So I'm gonna make it like full.
Oh, yeah, like a pod or something.
Yeah, I want to make that pod frame lock do like a Zircotai frame with a mother of
That
pearl
is so
inlay.
broke, dude. That knife is tiny.
Exactly, Zircotai
Jesus.
frame, mother of pearl inlay, and a sandpine frame.
Full dress carry.
Yeah, I can carry it and use it.
We should take bets on how long it takes for Nick to lose it, because it's so small.
No, I carry the Black
You
Star.
already
I'm gonna-
lost.
I carry the
The
Black
what?
Star daily, and that just goes in
That's
that little fifth pocket. I haven't lost. I did.
Yeah.
Wait, I did lose it when I first
You
got
did
it.
You
lose
carry
it.
it daily?
Lost
Without-
like a month.
Touched.
Yeah,
Whoa.
I sharpened it.
Very touching, Nick.
I've broken the
I'm
tip on
flipping
it.
it right now.
You just never know that I broke the tip on it because I've reground it.
Does anybody want to know what I'm
That's
carrying?
it.
What are you
It's a
carrying?
great size.
Any guesses?
Right now, I'm gonna say,
Your OTF.
Been carrying it for the past week.
Tough knives?
Kaplan? Oh, no, wait, yeah, did you get a Tough Knives?
Tough knives.
No, it's a small Sabenza.
Sorry, what?
No one cares about that. You
Who
go.
cares about that?
I've been
going.
carrying my
That's a
Sabenza
bet,
for the
huh?
past week.
Jeremiah,
What's
Jeremiah,
that?
Jeremiah, what are you carrying?
Right now I'm carrying a Black Star, an Arrakis, SOCOM Elite. That's everything.
Okay, never mind.
Brand loyalty.
Dude, that's what's up. Well, yeah, kind of. I decided if I was going to be surrounded by knives all the time, I was really only going to collect the automatics that I really want, or just ones that my friends make. Because like otherwise, I'll just buy everything. So.
Yeah, like I was saying, I was surprised Chuck still collects, because the moment I started making frame locks, and then I started making them full time, so I was consistently making them, I stopped collecting because I'm like, this is boring because I could make it. And then it stopped collecting for about 5 years, and I just started collecting again because of Jeremiah, and now I have about 5 automatics.
Bam, son!
And I started collecting automatics, and because I haven't made those yet, I am about to. But until that happens, I'm gonna collect them. I'm gonna start making them, and after a year, I'm gonna get bored and just sell all the automatics I have and stop collecting again.
Whatever.
And then I'm gonna start only collecting OTFs.
I think you're gonna start making them and get frustrated with how difficult they are.
Yeah. And then I'll move on to collecting only OTFs, and eventually I'm gonna try to want to make an OTF.
Wait, is that Chuck? Is that the only one you haven't made?
As far as an automatic, I haven't made an out the front.
That's it.
Yeah.
Huh. But wait, you've made every other kind of knife, right?
I haven't made a button lock folder, but
Okay.
and for slip joints, I want to build a split back whittler, where it's got 2 springs that taper down from. There's 3 blades. The 2 small blades each have their own independent spring, and those taper down to the spring for the main larger blade.
Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to Google that one. I'm unfamiliar. That sounds really neat, though.
Yeah, I'm lost. I thought it was me 1 spring for the big blade, and then 1 spring for the 2 small blades that was pinned in the middle.
No, it's 2 separate springs, and there's a tapered spacer in the middle to separate them for the 2 small blades.
Neat.
Bill Rupel used to have a table next to me at the Blade Show, and I would sit and look at his knives and pick his brain a little bit.
So your next show is Blade Show, and what's your regular show circuit these days? I mean, we've got to talk about the show thing. There's so many goddamn shows. Not in a bad way, but there's a lot of them. Might be in a bad way, but as a maker, what shows are you hitting? What's your circuit this year?
I used to do 9 shows a year before I had kids.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy if you're not even making stuff and just going to them.
All over the country. And then, this year I have Blade Show, which is coming up according to Nick, in 6 months.
Yeah, in 6 months. Perpetually 6 months.
Then I go to...
And then every time it's, like, when it's 2 months, it's 7 months away.
Yeah, it keeps adding.
I only acknowledge it once a week away.
Then I go to the gathering, but that's just for fun. I don't display. I just go and hang out. It's actually a fun show because I can talk to makers and buy material, and it's in Vegas. And then I do the New York Custom Knife Show, which is in New Jersey. And then the Kentucky Custom Knife Show at the beginning of December. And that's usually my last show for the year. So about 3 shows a year now.
All right. That I feel like those are the most popular standbys. I mean, we've got a lot of shows these days, but those are the ones that have been there and are probably continuing to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I would do more, but there are just so many shows, and you can only build so many knives. You know, I don't like going to a show with 3 knives because it's not necessarily cost effective. And
I don't know what you're talking about. I've done
Depends on how much you sell those knives for.
That's true. That's a good point.
Well, I only did that in Kentucky, and Kentucky's a cheap show, so.
Well, like in New Jersey, Kirby Lambert's next to me. He brings 2 knives. He comes all the way from Canada.
I think he just does that to come to New York, because the New York show is very expensive. The table is like $700. They make you stay at that hotel, which is about $200 a night, and then just eating in New York costs more. So, like, I think he just breaks even. I think he does that as a vacation.
He does. He goes and he really enjoys the food. He goes to Nobu for sushi.
Also, he's not even breaking even. He's losing money.
He's just getting food, just getting chow.
Yeah, I've been to Nobu. It's about
For some people, it's just
$150 to $200 a person.
Yeah. New York's not that bad, we swear.
Nah.
I live here. It costs a lot.
Oh yeah, that's right. Shit, I totally forgot about that. Okay.
You don't say.
You don't say.
Let's see. So the next show's Blade Show, so it's a little calm until that. We have about 6 months to get ready.
What's some downtime?
Then what's after that? We got well, what's first?
The next show?
Paris or the next one's Vegas.
No,
Vegas.
next one's the Portland. Invitational.
It's Northwest Handbuilt.
No one
It's
knows
the
what that
end of
is.
that month.
It's in July.
I think a lot of people don't know what that is. I think more people will know what it is.
And you have to be invited as a maker. You can't just ask to get a table.
Oh,
It's
is
the
that
TKI of the Pacific Northwest.
The PNWTKI.
Pacific
Maybe you can
Northwest.
throw one more acronym there? Yeah.
Okay, well, after that it's Vegas, and that's like 10 months away.
Yeah, and
I
I was
mean,
in,
Chuck, you do show deliveries for that, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
and I was invited to go to the FIAC show in Paris.
Oh, the fix.
Yes.
Oh, the Feeks, yeah. That is
Ah.
awesome.
Oh, I don't know. I thought you were mispronouncing CCAC. So what is that one?
Well, there's two.
It's
yeah,
like
somebody
way
else
more
knows
art. It's like way
Yeah.
more art knife influenced. Grace actually goes there.
Yes.
When is that?
Grace
Oh,
Murray.
really? Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch. It's pretty much just like primarily art knives. It's very fancy.
It's about the third week of September.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's
ever since,
I think only 1 day, or maybe 2 days. It's right after CCAC.
ever since we had dinner with Grace Horn and them that time, I've been following Grace Horn on Instagram. She makes some insane scissors, like the recent
yeah.
scissors she's making
Oh
right
yeah,
now.
it's insane. Yeah.
I keep
Great.
following that
Scissors are
build.
off the hook.
Yeah, I've been following that
There's a
build. They're
YouTube
insane.
video of her with scissors from the Feeks show, like a few years
Was it
ago.
right?
Yeah.
I gotta find that.
They actually have a YouTube channel.
Oh wow! All right.
Okay.
See, that's great because all the any bladed object, scissors or knives, it just disappears. It won't get remembered. I hate to plug YouTube like that, but it's better to have it immortalized in video than to lost forever.
Yeah, and I'm sure people are watching the YouTubes anyway. So
Oh yeah.
All right, so Chuck, what's something you'd like to build? Like, what's your next goal to build, or just some cool thing you want to try? Or you've really tried most of it. You've been around for a long time.
I drew up a swing guard automatic
Hell yeah.
nice.
because I've done some manual swing guards, but I've never done a swing guard automatic. So to add even more moving parts.
Yeah, just make it more complicated. Why don't you?
Now, for the guys that are more into the modern collecting or new, can you explain what a swing guard is? I'm assuming a lot of guys actually don't know what that is.
So it's a folding knife, and the guards pivot on the blade, and when you open the blade, the guards swing out, and essentially, like an old school Italian stiletto, have the guards across to protect your hands if you're gonna,
Yeah. So essentially, the guards sit on the left side of the handle, and whenever the blade flies open, the guards swing around with them. Whenever the blade locks, the guards are vertically on top of the handle, like a normal guard would be.
Correct. So I'm going to do an automatic. So when you either bolster release or latch release and open the knife, the guards will automatically deploy with the blade.
Loving it.
So a little old school, a little new school. I'll probably do it with some new school materials, but it's really an old school design.
So
yeah, that's a great one.
Damacor blade, Damascus guard. I gotcha.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah,
Odin's Eye.
I did one a few months ago, a CPM 154
Odin
blade,
Force.
Zerk guards, front and rear black Damascus bolsters, and mother of pearl scales.
Oh wait, that was the one that yeah. Wait, did that have a nail nick in it?
It did not.
I think of a different knife.
It had a thumb stud that was made out of Damascus, and it opened with a thumb stud.
Okay. All right.
Now, the mother of pearl, how does that machine? Because it's been like 3 years since I've used it, and the reason it's been 3 years is because last time I used it, it cracked on me, and I want to use it on some builds right now.
Well, I don't machine it because I don't do anything with CNC or water jet.
Well, manually machining it, like for an inlay, for example.
As long as you're using a sharp end mill and lots of coolant or even water, it should cut well. But it's natural material, And the way it grows, there could be inclusions in it that you can't necessarily see with your naked eye, but once you grind into it, then they're become apparent. So,
Now, is there any way to fill those, like carbon fiber, or it's like it's fucked at that point?
no, it's fucked at that point.
So that's why it might be another 3 years until I use it if this doesn't work out.
Well, if you're going to do an inlay, then it's less likely to crack, just because you can set it into the handle and you're not going to see the edges. Whereas on a regular folder, you can see the edges of it.
Well, when I did it 3 years ago, I had the top layer crack off, kind of like, you know how it's almost like layers. I had a layer part crack off, so it was on the surface, and I was like, fuck.
No, then you just grind it thinner.
There you go. Make it work. Adapt and survive.
Knife makers don't make mistakes; they make modifications.
I always heard knife makers don't make mistakes; they make smaller knives.
I heard it was new designs, right?
Well, that's for a fixed blade. They turn into smaller knives because if you screw up the grind, they just get narrower. But for folders, there's not a lot of leeway.
You make
Small blades, large handles.
Yeah.
It's all about that ratio, golden ratio.
That's right.
What is the bronze ratio?
Oh yes, the secondary and important, not to be forgotten.
Yeah, just like the brown note.
I was just about to say that.
The brown note was perfect.
Yeah.
Chuck, how far are you from Bridgeport, Connecticut?
Oh boy.
Maybe 2 hours.
Okay. No, because I'm looking at a surface grinder over there right now.
A lot of Bridgeports, like, still kind of just floating around.
Yeah, they're mostly all like the old surface. If you're looking for any old equipment, surface grinders, anything, if on Craigslist you go around this area, it's always in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Dude, New England is like a really old part of the country with oldest part of the country with a huge amount of secret machine shops kicking around.
Yeah, any old manufacturing towns, you need any old equipment, you're gonna find
Which is like every small Massachusetts town.
Yeah, so around there, it's great for them. For me, I could find any machine I need if I'm willing to drive 3 to 4 hours.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's one in Chicopee, Massachusetts, if you're really looking for one.
Well, I want an automatic, but there's this one for a really nice reed in Bridgeport for $800. I might get it just because it's cheap, as long as they could load it on their end. But I really want like an automatic.
Well, this one's automatic. It's a KO Lee 6x18, and it was
good.
Reduced to $11.50, but it says open to offers.
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about. I've seen it for like 8 months. There's been the automatic KO Lee I've seen on Craigslist for like 8 months.
It's been up there for a while.
And if you see one at that cheap for 8 months, that means a whole bunch of people have checked it out and it's not worth buying. Because for an automatic, that's cheap.
For surface grinders.
I would oblige.
Hashtag sexual favors for
Nick,
surface grinders.
You can check it out when you pick up that.
The router.
Yeah, the router.
What's the next time you're going to be in Mass?
Probably sometime next month.
Never.
The month after that. I can't. Standing still is not something I've ever been good at.
Sometime next, never.
Yeah.
Lebanon? Is that anywhere around? No, I don't even know.
New Hampshire?
No, Lebanon's like, I think, Jersey.
There's one in Bridgeport, but it's $16,000.
Oh, I'm willing to spend
problem, dude.
up to $3,000 is what I have to spend right now.
Up to $2,500 and a quesarito. Done. That's it.
There's a 68 Dodge Charger in Framingham, Massachusetts. I need to go pick it up.
Well, this is just going off the rails.
No. Okay, I think we. So we've been recording.
We're trolling Craigslist. I think. Yeah.
So are we going to what is it? Casual encounters. Let's see.
Right. Let's go ahead and check out the community forum part of Craigslist.
Misconnections. You have blue eyes, Chuck, and I saw you walking down.
I got one for you. So when did I got two-part question. First, when do you feel like blade centering and and lockup percentages became more important? Was it during the transition into sort of the tactical style, or has that always been there and people just have paid more attention to it lately?
I don't think it was always there. I think that people are paying more attention to it now because maybe more makers are making knives with higher percentage of lockup. And back then, I think that there were less knife makers. Now it seems like there's a new knife maker every week on Instagram who's got 30,000 followers, but it wasn't an issue back in the day. People built knives differently, maybe with higher quality standards than they do now sometimes. There was less CNC involved.
What are you trying to say, Chuck?
So, I mean, yeah, the details were important, but just different details?
The details were different. It was more art than anything. And now people look at it as a commodity, so to speak, where they're not as passionate about it. And I know guys that only buy knives that have instant equity in them instead of buying them just because they like them and they're passionate about.
Well, there's a lot of guys in there for the flip.
Yeah. But I think, all the stuff about early lockup or late lockup, all that's new. All that's
right.
filthy casuals nitpicking over lockup on a knife. Lock stick, no lock stick. Well, a little bit of lock stick is okay because it shows that the lock is working.
You don't want to just slide
like
off.
a lock should slick a little bit. Like if you take, I guarantee you, like most knives you pick up, if literally you don't feel a hair of stick and you spine whack it or try to close it like forcefully, it's gonna slip. Because I mean, like, very rarely would a knife that feels like there's virtually no stick is a solid lock.
Mm.
That's why I guess let's say I don't like steel lock inserts because they don't stick as much. But if you put any bit of oil on that insert, it won't bind because it's oil versus tie, and the oil will keep it from binding. It'll feel great until you try to spine whack it or forcefully close it. It'll slip.
So, Chuck, what's your ideal percentage of lockup?
So based on the thickness of the liner, usually that amount. So if I'm using 60 thousandths liners, which is about a 1/16 of an inch, then I usually have that much lockup percentage on the knife.
So interesting. So I go off the percentage of the blade thickness, not the liner thickness. Because, like, for example, I make knives with 3/16 blades, 1/8 inch, 5/32, and right now these pods are 0.1. So obviously I can't make a lockup 60 thou because it's gonna be more than a half.
Okay, so on a 3/16 thick blade, what's your lockup?
Generally, anywhere from 20 to 30% of the thickness of the knife is my range.
So almost a third.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much not go past the third.
Yeah, so it's about the same based on your, depending on what your liner thickness is. It's about the same. It's just proportionally the materials are different, but it's about the same amount of lockup.
I've had knives like I can make 5% lockup great, but 5% tends to want to be very sticky. 10% works great, but when it's that little, and now it's not realistic testing. But if a lock goes with like 10% lockup and it feels great, and you spine whack it enough, it'll shear the lock face because titanium is soft.
Yeah.
So it'll work great and all, but just 20 won't do much. And even like the knife I carry, it started at about 25%. And once it hit about 50, 55 after 4 years of using it, it just stopped. At a certain point, titanium compacts so much that it just stops moving. And I spine whacked that knife. I abused it for 4 years just to see what it could take. But yeah, it's not. There's no science to that. It just whatever.
There is. I used to carry a William Henry. I carried a William Henry for 12 years, like a T12, and the lockup was pretty much in the same spot that it's always been in. Like I had to replace the detent ball, but other than that, the lockup hasn't really moved ever. So you get all these guys who say, "Oh, I need early lockup because it's going to wear in." How much use are you putting this knife through to have it move over
Well,
that much.
1,000 flips a day while watching Netflix is a lot of use, man. Come on now.
Well, that's why you need a Valley song. No lockup to worry about.
Yep. Yeah, I've only designed one, and it seems like it was equally the hardest knife I've ever designed and the easiest. Because there's like no lockup or nothing, so.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a latch on it?
It's latchless now.
Chuck, can we just call you? What's up? Like, can you be our bi-monthly guest or something? Are you good to come back with us and join the podcast for like 5 or 10 minutes?
Like
Yeah,
once in a while,
wow.
like because our goal is to do 2 maker episodes a month, and like one what's in the shop episode, and we could probably just random knife makers just jump in and talk about what's in their shop for that what's in the shop episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, those are like 20-minute recordings for what's in the shop, just kind of what we're working on that month. And we're gonna have probably like a post show episodes. So the goal is like 3 episodes a month. We were pretty good on doing it until the whole Portland and Vegas nonsense.
Yeah, we got a little behind.
Portland awaits.
I was moving. We got sidetracked a little busy, but now that we're back into the swing of things, we're definitely gonna be doing those mini-sodes more often. It would be cool to have a list of guys we can just kind of ring up and just be like, hey dude, what are you working on? Where can our listeners find you on the internet to see your awesome knives and contact you to possibly purchase one?
You can find me on Instagram under Gedraitis Knives. That's where you see the most up-to-date work that I'm working on. I have a Facebook page, Gedraitis Knives. I also have a secret Facebook group for Gedraitis Knives that you have to request to be a member of. And if you want to see pictures of my work, you can just Google Gedraitis Knives, look under images, and see the variety of styles of knives that I make.
Awesome.
And we'll have his full name and spelling and the description of
Yeah,
his
we'll
podcast.
tag you and all that goodness. Another awesome episode of the Bladeology podcast with our first guest, Chuck. Thank you so much for coming on here and talking trash with us and sharing your thoughts on everything that everybody is involved in. Knives.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Very cool. Guys, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
Make sure to wipe twice. Nick Schuprin out.
I'll leave you with a quote in Latin. Nihil verum nisi mors. There you go. Elijah out.
Right on. Thanks so much, guys. Jeremiah out.
And Chuck Gedraitis out.